everyone. Hope you're doing well. And in today's flash briefing, I am joined by Andy. Andy is our Director of Financial Planning and one of our advisors in our Central Illinois office locations. And so today we're going to talk about the tools that we have access to or that our clients have access to help them address maybe needing some long-term care coverage. And so we'll get into that in a minute. But before we do, Andy, how you doing today?
Doing well. No complaints over here. I would say, I've been talking to every client that comes in. Just, you talk about the weather, but I truly mean the weather has been absolutely wonderful this year. The number of days, even above 90, in my opinion, has been so low. It's just been absolutely beautiful. So I can't say enough about it.
Yeah. So that's awesome. You can't complain about that, it sounds like.
Yeah. Now, I know it's not Denver weather, but it's been pretty nice.
Yeah, well, good deal. And I have to ask, I'm a Cardinals fan. Andy's a Cubs fan. Obviously, we had Albert Pujols playing one of his last games, a really field hitting, a great home run. Andy, are you excited to see him go?
I was excited to see him go 10 years ago whenever he left. You know what? At this point, he's just had such a great career. Yes, I'm excited to see him go, but I can appreciate what he's done. One of the best players, one of the best hitters of all time. So you mentioned the home run he hit the other day against the Cubs. I mean, that ball was up out of the strike zone and he still turned it around and hit it into the bleachers. So, he's a great player, but yes, I will be excited to see him go.
I'm sure you will be. But like you said, hey, it's been cool to see him kind of do it one more time and do it like he used to. So. Good deal. Well, hey, let's get into it. There are a bunch of tools out there. One of the things that if you've talked with us, worked with us for a number of years or watched any of our videos, you've heard us say that there are good tools and bad tools, and tools can be right or wrong. And so today's conversation, we're going to talk about the tools, but the actual use of the tools is going to vary based upon your goals, your financial situation, and your overall financial plan. And so I'll preface this by saying, definitely, if you're interested in one of these tools or curious if it fits into your plan, reach out to us, and Andy and his team and our advisors will be more than willing to have a conversation with you there. And so, Andy, I'll just kind of set you up. What are the 3 or 4 tools that we have access to address long-term care needs?
Yeah, so I think there's going to be 3 main tools. A fourth one that we'll just touch on briefly. One tool is, if we're trying to cover long-term care needs, some people might say, hey, I'm self-insured. Well, that simply means you have dollars in your portfolio that maybe will not ever be needed to provide income during retirement or meet any other need that you could essentially pay out of pocket for long-term care needs. Sure. So I don't know if you'd call that a tool, but that is one way that you can cover long-term care cost is just simply out of a portfolio that maybe you have extra setting aside there. Beyond that, there are 3 main tools that we use. Each one of them is a little different. There's some overlap between the 3 of them, but each one's a little different, and they work to accomplish different goals.
Sure.
Now, when we're thinking of these, there's a spectrum both of cost and of benefit. So one of the tools is going to be obviously probably cheaper in the long run. The others are going to be more expensive, but it kind of goes back to that saying, a lot of times you get what you pay for. So the more one of these products costs, generally it's because the insured is going to receive more benefits or different benefits or more permanent benefits than the cheaper options. So option number 1 that we look at for everybody, just to get kind of a baseline of what's the cost of coverage, is going to be just what we call a traditional long-term care policy. So this one's similar to, I would kind of compare it to a term life insurance product where the policy stays in place for as long as you're paying premiums. And if you never need to use the policy, then you never get any benefit from it. Right. So the fact that you're not guaranteed to get a benefit is what allows this product, this tool, to be generally the cheapest option out of all 3 that we're going to talk about today. Essentially, yeah.
And sorry to interrupt you there. I was going to ask, long-term care, traditional long-term care policies, that's what everyone thinks of when they think of addressing long-term care needs. Something that maybe people aren't aware of is the fact that there actually aren't that many long-term care policy providers on the market anymore.
Right.
And could you kind of talk about why that is?
Yeah, well, the cost of doing it has changed throughout the years, and I guess the profitability for the companies as well ensuring this cost for the client. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. So with these companies, more and more have gone away and maybe focused on other types of insurance where now we're left with, I don't know, what would you say, 2 companies right now that are covering long-term care as far as from a traditional long-term care standpoint. So you're right, there's not a lot to choose from. And I mean, part of some of that is what goes into the fact that a lot of times if we go with a traditional long-term care policy, the premium cost of those it's possible that those can increase over the life of the policy. Right. So you may get a price when you first purchase the policy as far as the premium cost, but that price can go up over time depending on what happens in the market there.
Right. So, that's a traditional long-term care policy. What's kind of the next step down the road? What's the next tool that can be used by folks?
Yeah. So when we're thinking about basically the structure, the foundation of a policy, it's either going to be long-term care focused, which is what we just talked about, or it's going to be more built on a life insurance type product. So those are 2 ends of the spectrum. The next one we'll talk about is kind of right in the middle there. It's got some long-term care features, but it's built on a life insurance chassis, if you will. So this is what we call a hybrid long-term care product. And essentially what happens is it's going to be more expensive than the one we just talked about. But the benefit of this type of product is, you pay your premium, whatever it is. Let's just say it's $50,000 of premium. And that sounds like a lot. It can be paid all at once. It can be paid over 10 years. It can be paid over your life. It all depends on what time period we're looking at.
Right.
But the coverage is permanent. So once you've paid for that policy, the coverage lasts until your death. Now, the main difference between this and the one we talked about previously is that if you never need to use the policy for long-term care needs, then at your death, your beneficiary, whoever you name, will receive a death benefit. A lot of times it's not going to be far and above the premium that was paid. It might be rather close to the total premium that was paid. So essentially, in some cases, it might resemble basically you're getting your money back that you paid for the policy, but at least you get some type of benefit even if you don't need to use it for long-term care. So this hybrid right in the middle of the spectrum there, you pay a premium. It's going to be more expensive than just a basic policy, but if you need it for long-term care, you can use it for that. If you don't need it for long-term care, you're going to get some type of death benefit back.
Yeah. And so it's great to have that optionality. And I know that you've had conversations like this with clients, and I have too. And I'm sure people watching this have probably heard similar things or similar stories of folks who paid premiums for years to traditional life long-term care policies, and then they never used it, and all that money was gone. And that really soured a lot of people to even thinking about covering long-term care. So that's why we've actually been really pleased with the performance and the addition of this hybrid long-term care policy. It kind of addresses some of those bad stories we've all heard about. And so, Andy, let's transition to that third tool. This is one that we've actually seen a lot of people starting to use more and more. Kind of walk us through the pros and cons of this one.
Yeah, so this one, I mentioned that spectrum, long-term care versus life insurance. This one is going to be a lot more life insurance focused. It will have a much higher death benefit than the one we just talked about, the hybrid option. So it's going to have a higher death benefit, but it also allows you to access that death benefit for long-term care needs if you need to. So this one is usually going to be the most expensive of the 3 options. But that's because, again, the benefit you're receiving is probably more than the other 2 we've discussed so far. And a lot of times that comes in the form of a higher death benefit. So the way these work is we determine what death benefit we want. And then based on that amount, if we have a long-term care need, the insured on the policy is able to essentially access that part of that death benefit while they're living to cover those long-term care costs.
Right. Now, this is more of a life insurance tool. And so would someone, let's say that they're living, they're in good health, they maybe think, hey, I got this life insurance policy I put my premiums into. Can they access that policy while they're living? And is there any costs or taxes associated with that?
Yeah, so it depends on the product. All the products are different, but a lot of times there will be some type of cash value build up within the policy. So you put your premium in there. Some of it's covering the cost of insurance, some of it's covering the cost of life insurance, long-term care insurance, but then you're also that cash value is growing over time in most cases. So let's say you don't need it for long-term care, but you need to access it for something else. A lot of times you can access that cash value through whether the policy allows for a loan or if it's a straight withdrawal. A lot of times you can access some of that cash value while you're alive. But we'd have to look at the specific product we're using to say, what's the impact of doing that? Does it decrease the future death benefit? Does it decrease the future available long-term care pool of money? So, we'd have to walk through the pros and cons of that. But a lot of times, depending on the product, you can access some of that cash while you're living, even if it's not for specifically a long-term care need.
Yeah. And, it's one of those things where every tool is not right for every person, right? Or every plan.
Right.
And so, personally, I am actually looking at implementing this tool in my personal financial plan. It's right for my needs on both the death benefit side, the tax planning side, and down the road, it may help address a long-term care coverage for myself. And so This is the tool that's right for me and my plan, but it's maybe not going to be right for everyone. So that's where having a conversation is important. And so Andy, what would you say someone who watches this say, hey, that's kind of interesting, or those tools are unique? What would you tell someone to do as their first step?
Yeah, so I guess the first step would be determine if there's a need to cover that. Is there a long-term care need? Are you self-insured? And if you don't know, some people may say, well, how do I know if I'm self-insured? Well, the answer is come in and talk to us, and we'd be happy to run the numbers and see how you're trending and what the real risk is. But we also have to keep in mind, this is a life insurance product. So it's not a guaranteed issue in some cases. So there would be underwriting potentially. So some people may not even qualify for this product. So then we would have to start looking at other options. So I guess the first step is let's determine if there is a risk of long-term care in your plan. What's the risk that it derails your plan, potentially down the road? And then we have to look at what's the best tool to cover that. So we talked about 3 today, 4 if we talk about self-insured, but there are different tools we can look at to say, how can we cover that need in the way that's best for you as a specific individual or couple?
Awesome. So if you found this interesting, we hope you did. But if you have any questions and you want to go through those steps that Andy just walked us through, shoot us an email or give us a call. We'd love to chat with you about it. And Andy and his team or one of our advisors would be more than willing to have that conversation with you. So thanks for your time. I really appreciate it. We look forward to talking with you soon.